All right, well, I am in Sydney, Australia today, and I'm joined by Damien and Kylie. We are going to be talking about insurance. Welcome on the podcast.
Hi Mark, thanks for having us. We're happy to be here and look forward to having a chat with you.
Very exciting.
Looking forward to it.
Very good. So maybe just to start off with, just to talk about each of you personally, is like how you got into insurance, and then we'll get into the actual company and how it relates to the hire industry.
Sure. Well, look, I started in a business development role for a company that was fitting commercial furniture, and decided that I'd gone as far as I could in that space. Wanted to get into a new industry, and initially I thought banking was going to be the go, but I had a friend of the family that was an insurance broker, and they talked me into it, and it's the best thing I've ever done. So that was in 2007. And so I've been working as an insurance broker since 2007 and had my own business for the last 10 years in Melbourne.
Yeah, and then you got into the hire industry during that time as well?
So basically from the very start of my insurance career, I was dealing with hire businesses. It was just one of the industries that I was aligned with when I first started. So I was lucky in that respect.
Yeah. And yourself, Kylie?
Well, I've always been in insurance, so 29 years in the insurance industry, 20 working with the Hire Association on and off and all of its members. And the last 12 years I've had my own business in that industry. So I live and breathe it. Hire is my life.
Wow. And so 20 years working with the hire industry, specifically around insurance.
Yes.
So what was it like 20 years ago when it came to insurance?
It was a really different time. We'd just gone through some changes and caps on liability. In 2002, it was really hard for hire companies to secure liability insurance. Sometimes I'd be going out and sitting with clients, they'd be crying. It was a really challenging time to arrange cover for people, and sometimes you couldn't always secure cover. So, we've definitely gone through peaks and troughs in that time and learnt a lot along the way. We've had a period where it's been a lot easier to place insurance, but then the last few years, with natural disasters being what they are, and they seem to be becoming far more frequent, it's become more challenging probably now than it was then.
Yeah. And so just for some of the audience, because I can guarantee there's someone out there listening that is saying, what is an insurance broker? I can guarantee someone out there is going to say it. Do you want to explain what is an insurance broker?
Sure. Well, we're an intermediary, so we work for our clients, be it the hire businesses, and we design and tailor an insurance program and then market it to insurers and get the best deal possible, essentially. And then that also works on the back end from a claims point of view. We act as the middleman in that instance, and I guess coordinate things on our clients' behalf.
Okay. And so I've been working with the HRIA for a while now, going to their trade shows and events, and I've seen the HRIA Insurance listed on various banners and trade shows and advertisements. So what's the link between HRIA Insurance and you guys?
Well, I guess because we've been in the industry for so long, so myself for 20 years, Damien for not too far short of that. We had so many clients in that area. So we first started working for a company that had a specialty in that area. And I guess the hire industry is one of those industries that once you become a part of it, you never leave it. Like, everyone in this industry is like a giant family. So when we started our own businesses, we still continued to either maintain relationships with clients in that sector, or you were drawn to them because they're just a great bunch of people to work with as well. And it is a high risk style industry in some capacities. So we want to make sure we add value. So from that point of view, we had quite a lot of clients in that industry, and thought, okay, well, let's put a name on it to reinforce the message. And it also helps the members to understand who we are as well, so they can go, okay, well, this is the sort of business we have. This is our bread and butter. We can help.
And when did that link initially start?
It was 3 or 4 years ago that we branded Hire Insurance Brokers. But for the last 12 years that I've been running independently, 10 years for Damien independently, we've been blessed to be connecting with more and more hire clients through that time.
Okay, and so if someone is a member of the Hire Rental Industry Association, or they're just in the hire industry, like how do they typically engage?
Well, a number of different ways, but we are the endorsed broker of the association, so we have their backing and we develop products and services for their client base, essentially. So if a new member joins, they would be pushed our way by the association for guidance for that initial startup sort of insurance program. But a lot of our I guess new business or clientele is coming from other hire companies at the moment, I think, because look, we have been in the industry for so long, and it is it's very insular in that respect that I think you need a broker that knows hire, because there's so many nuances around different claim exposures. And unless you've dealt with those type of things, and we've dealt with thousands of claims with hire, and we know the ins and outs and where the hire agreement comes into play and what sort of recovery prospects we're going to have for our clients. It's highly technical, and I think experience counts. So if we get the opportunity to talk to a member, I think we certainly do add a lot of value.
And you guys have been to the trade shows, the conventions?
Yeah. I think I'd be on my 12th in a row, I think.
Wow.
So, yeah. And Kylie, you'd probably be more,
Yeah,
I reckon.
it's a bag of fun. It's good to catch up with people as well. Like, obviously, we're there to talk to members that want to talk about insurance, but it's such a social industry as well that you're catching up with people that you've known for 20 years. It's nice.
And it's nice to, I guess, be able to catch up with, 20, 30 of your clients at one place. And look, they're all a lot of fun, aren't they, as well?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great opportunity for new people in the industry, the young professional network, those sort of like bring the next generation of people through. Because like I've always found, like if you don't have like a way to sort of get into the group of people, like you can go to the association and go to those events and then almost be like handheld, like, oh, meet this person or network like this. Where if you're just working at a company and you have to like try and network yourself, like it's much harder, like using LinkedIn or just chatting to people. So it's, for me, I think the trade show is a massive networking opportunity, and then adding on additional services like you guys to try and help businesses while we're there.
I think one of the great things I love about hire and especially hire business owners is their willingness to help other business owners and interact with people that have less experience. A lot of industries, they're very guarded around their process, their information,
their
IP. Whereas in hire, it seems to have the opposite. That people go out of their way to ensure startup businesses and businesses that aren't as experienced get as much help as they can, which is, I think, really admirable.
All right, so let's say that I'm a hire business and I want to work with you guys to insure my equipment. What does the insurance cover?
It is varied, so it depends on the type of business that you have. In the hire industry, it's so varied. You can have a hire and equipment company or plant and equipment company, a party and event hire company. You could hire portable toilets or buildings. The exposure is vast. So depending on the type of equipment that you hire, if you've had claims before, the size of your business, there's a lot of significant factors that go into it, but we would walk through the process, collect the information that we'd need from you, so the basic, the turnover, what you do, your claims history, and then talk to you about your hire agreement, your risk management processes, and from there, I guess, try and create a clear picture to an insurer that we can paint for them, so that we can explain that you're a safe or a great company for them to insure, to try and secure the best possible outcome from a premium point of view, but try and also add on the additional covers that you might need that are unique to your business as well.
And I think typically what we're placing in hire at the moment is, you'll have a mobile plant policy, public liability policy, property policy, marine, Cyber insurance is a really hot topic at the moment with us.
Very much so.
Especially in the current environment with claims. Management liability is another hot topic. And then some workers' comp depending on which state you're in, so and corporate travel, that type of thing. We offer all insurances, but those are the ones that typically are taken up by hire companies.
And so let's say I own a scissor lift, hypothetically, and I insure the scissor lift. I've agreed the value of the scissor lift and the premiums and that sort of stuff, and it gets damaged in an accident or something like that. Like, what's the process like? Is it the same as car insurance, where someone needs to go out, do an inspection, all sort of stuff? Like, how does it work?
It's very similar to car insurance in that example that you've given. And it's a tricky one when you say you've established a value. When you it's not like a motor vehicle in that respect. The way insurance policies work with equipment, in most circumstances, is that it's you put a sum insured on it, and then the insurer has the option to settle based on the sum insured or the market value, whichever's lesser. So it's important from our point of view to guide our clients and make sure that the sums insured are relatively accurate, so that that they're not paying too much premium, but also they're not underinsured as well. But we would just submit the claim to the insurer. There would be an assessor appointed. We would either agree or disagree with the assessment from a value point of view, or if it's being repaired, we'd make sure that the repairs are being carried out in a timely fashion, and get the settlement finished for the client. Move on, hopefully not to another claim, but it's fairly straightforward. It is similar to motor vehicle insurance.
And I think we were talking before the podcast about documentation that is required, and you mentioned you need to have the rental contract or the hire schedule linked back to that agreement to be able to claim the insurance.
Yeah.
And some people still are on paper documents, which is crazy. If you're on paper documents, get off paper documents. Is that examples where someone hasn't been able to claim their insurance because they've handwritten something and it's thrown out, or they've lost it?
Yes and no, Mark. It's more so around being able to recover. So if you have a claim, you own a hire business, you've got a piece of equipment damaged, I'm the hirer and I've damaged it. You at the end of the day, if you don't have a damage waiver in place, you want your insurer to recover the loss from the hirer, so that your claims history doesn't have this big claim on it when it wasn't your fault. So the documentation is more so just a step in that process, and if you don't have it done correctly or filled out correctly, it can just make that recovery process harder. And at the end of the day, your insurances will increase because your claims are higher.
Yeah, okay.
And also, just to add to that, your hire agreement, they're your terms of trade. So it's really important that the hire company understands the terms of trade that they have with their customer as well, and that their customer signs that agreement. The fact that the hirer has sent a copy via email, or the hirer has seen the agreement but hasn't signed it, it is still a legally binding document, and it helps you if you are in a claim scenario as well, and it just makes a claim or an insurance process a lot easier in the event that something happens that you don't want.
Yeah, you'd almost have to dig up like email trails to
exactly.
prove that.
Yeah, that's exactly what you have to do, and it just gets messy.
Yeah. You want it to be clean and clear.
And so, while we're on the topic of damage waivers, so what's the difference between damage waiver and insurance?
Well, this is a contentious issue in hire. The damage waiver has always been something that some businesses love and some businesses hate. I think traditionally, the people against damage waiver are just saying it's purely just a revenue stream, and it covers nothing. But I disagree with that. I think that there's certainly a place for damage waiver in hire, because in the absence, the onus of all damage goes to the hirer if your terms and conditions are done correctly, and the damage waiver just limits their exposure. And there certainly are exclusions, so there's still a duty of care for the hirer, but it just gives a level of protection, Mark, because if you were going to hire a $40,000 excavator and you don't take out the damage waiver, you don't have the ability, you might not have the ability to pay $40,000 for a replacement machine. So it just gives a level of protection to the hirer. And I think, look, I'm an advocate for it. What about you, Kylie?
I think it depends on the situation. I think the smaller independent hire companies as well, keeping in mind that if they are agreeing or offering damage waiver on their within their terms and conditions, these are things that are going to bank up on their claims history as well.
Yeah.
So if, Mark, if you were to hire 4 machines from me and you had a horrible run and all 4 of them were damaged, well, you've taken my damage waiver and then that's banking up on my insurance premiums. So, or on my claims history, which is going to affect my insurance premiums in the future. So I think it can have an adverse effect on a hire company as well. It depends on the scale and the size. I think a small hire company might have to consider, I guess, both sides of the fence when they're considering offering damage waiver or not, because there are pros and cons to both.
But I think it's interesting that the genesis of the damage waiver was to collect, say, be it 12.5% of your hire and keep that as a pool for working losses. And then somehow it's morphed into what it is now, where you do that and you still claim on your insurance.
Yes.
So it's funny how that's evolved.
Yes.
Because I know when I first started, it was certainly that was the concept. We would say that this is a working pool of cash that you've got to pay for small losses that you don't claim on your insurance. Now we're writing policies around the damage waiver, knowing that they're going to claim on their insurance as well. So it's certainly tricky, but I agree with you, Kylie, in the respect that, look, overall, the loss ratio governs everything, doesn't it? So if the business is having claim after claim after claim, we certainly need to address the risk management first and make sure that the processes are correct, because something's wrong. But also you have to perhaps reevaluate whether the damage waiver is something that's sustainable long term.
Yeah.
But I guess, if you're doing what you were saying before, where you have a damage waiver and you use that pool of money to repair the asset and you don't claim your insurance, and that won't affect your premium, yeah? Because
you're not claiming.
But you're saying that's not as common as what it used to be.
No. Well, look, I think that really minor things, the hire businesses,
like wear and tear. And
they're not claiming everything, but I think it's certainly not done like it used to be done, where you'd have, because some businesses are collecting a considerable amount of money for damage waiver.
Very much so.
And I think that until you actually look at the impact it has on premium, then you don't really understand that you're doing yourself an injustice sometimes by claiming when you're collecting money on that scale as well.
Yeah, interesting. I might try and talk to small hire companies about the way they allocate that revenue and amortize it against equipment.
Yeah,
and wear and
I'd be
tear.
interested to find out the outcome of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say I own a hire business, I've got a range of fleet and I want to insure it. Obviously, it depends on like a whole bunch of variables on how much it is, but what can someone expect to pay for insurance?
You're right. It is varying, but it varies based on this type of company that's needing the insurance as well. So the size of the business, what they do, what they hire, have they had claims before, where they're located. So there's quite a few things that we'd take into consideration. We couldn't necessarily give you a flat price as such, but we have a suite of products which are dedicated to the industry as well, or specifically designed for the industry, and we'd work with the individual to nut out, based on the varied information that we'd need from them, a guide for their premiums. So we couldn't just give someone a plain guide.
Yeah,
I think that's
how long's a piece of string sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But is there like a percentage, or is someone expected to pay 5% of the value of the asset? Like what is the range? I'm not sure how much it costs to insure equipment.
Every insurer is different in that regard, which is why I guess there's a benefit of a broker. So every insurer will have a set of actuaries that would assist them to compile their own claims data and work by region to establish a rating structure, a pricing guide. But every insurer is different in terms of what they're going to offer as well. So one insurer might have one rate, another insurer might have another, but the benefit of the broker is that they're going to have a look at the premium structures of each business, negotiate with those insurers, and we'll try and meet a middle ground in terms of what's fair for the client.
And Kylie mentioned earlier that we are in a hard insurance market at the moment.
Very much
and it's
so.
cyclical. That it's a soft market, hard market. We're in a hard market at the moment. So really what's coming to the fore at the moment is how you present the information to the insurers. And that's where I think that having the experience that we have and the quality of our presentations makes a big difference in the results that we're getting for our clients at the moment. And that might be, risk engineering information around sprinkler systems, construction surveys, that type of thing. So all of these little factors contribute to I guess, an overall rating and where the insurers see the risk at.
I mean, sorry to interrupt, but if I look back at, say, in 2002 when we had a hard market for liability, certainly it was a challenging time and not everyone could secure insurance. We're now also in a challenging time, not necessarily for liability, but definitely in the property market, because we unfortunately have had La Nina and bushfires and cyclones and floods and you name it, natural disaster after natural disaster. And whilst it has been cyclical for some time, at the moment, I don't know if we've moved out of that natural disaster phase of the cycle. No. It's been going on for such a period of time that some of the insurers that we've worked with for a long time, that you've always been able to look at a client and say, well, we'll be able to find a solution for you somewhere. It's just a matter of where. There's some clients that you would speak to now, depending on the industry, that you may not be able to secure insurance for, which is why the experience is really important, to have someone who works in your sector, who knows, who can guide you and say, okay, well, maybe if we do this and this and this, we might be able to change this outcome here, and it's going to secure something that's far more favourable or secure the insurance.
And I think the 2022 flood events, East Coast flood events, is the most costly insurance event in Australia ever for insurers. And that's off the back of a number of other natural disasters. So when you take that into consideration, the insurers' portfolios aren't profitable at the moment in the property space. So yeah, it's certainly it's a difficult place to navigate for us at the moment. So it's up to, I guess, our clients to adopt best practice and make sure that their housekeeping and we're presenting the risk in the best possible light to get the best outcome for them.
So let's say I'm a company that is struggling to insure my equipment. Two things I'd like to discuss. So one, what are some of the key causes for not being able to get insurance? And then two, what can I do as a business owner to better put forward like a case to get insurance?
Look, I think we can use event hire for this one, just because we've spoken a lot about equipment, and event hire is a massive part of what we do. But as far as if you're struggling to get insurance for your equipment, that would be claims driven most likely. And what you can do is review your processes. So, for instance, in the event space, you're hiring out structure and marquees, and you've had a lot of claims. Well, we would give guidance on how are you weighting your marquees down, and the association's done a lot of work around weighting guidelines, and some businesses adopt them, some don't, and the ones that don't are the ones that have claims. So that's our advice to them, and also we just look genuinely, go in depth into the business and work out, from a core loss causation standpoint, and say, right, well, what are the trends that we can identify here, and what can we do to really try and counteract them? Yeah.
What if I'm putting my construction equipment on a certain job site? Does that change the insurance?
Well, that's really a terms and conditions thing. So, for instance, in a damage waiver, you have to, I know that with the association wording, that if site security is available, the hirer needs to put it in. So there has to be some onus that goes onto the hirer. You can't just leave equipment overnight in the open in a driveway. It's going to be stolen in a heartbeat. So, we really push our clients to educate their clients. That's the key, and that's about their damage waiver as well. So it's all good having a damage waiver, but if you haven't articulated it to the hirer well enough, then all they're going to do is say that this damage waiver covers nothing and it causes you more issues. So it's really an education from us to the client, from a risk standpoint, and then from the client to the hirer as well.
But let's just say, hypothetical, there's a contractor out there that is notorious for like being really rough on the equipment, and it's causing a lot of damage, and they're known in the industry as being ones that are going to do it, but they rent at the highest rate, so everyone wants to rent to them. Would the insurance companies ever say, oh, you're doing a long-term rental with that company on that site, that's a risk?
I don't think they dive down into that level.
They're not at that level, no.
But what if I bought like something in a mining site that was like a $5 million machine that was going on a long-term rental? Like they don't take into account where it's going?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it depends. So certainly from a mining sector, or if it was air side or rail side, those sort of things, or if it was in a tidal area or over water, those sort of things are absolutely taken into consideration, and they're the sort of things that we talk to our clients about, because some insurers will exclude them from cover straight up unless you're talking to them about it. So when we would talk to a client about arranging their insurance, there are definitely questions that we're going to be asking them. And if they're working in those sectors, what type of work? How close to, are they right next to? Are they covering the plane? Is it where they're letting the plane sleep at night? On
barges, that type of thing. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So I mean, there's critical information that would be important. You don't want to just skim over it and say, well, we've got insurance, because sometimes you're just buying an expensive piece of paper. We don't want to give you that. We want to make sure that if you're buying something, it's actually useful. It's peace of mind. So you have your insurance for a reason. You don't want to think that it's a waste of money. You want to make sure that, I know it's not a sexy topic. It's not something that you want to talk about all the time, but if you take the time, go through the information and get it right, if you do have a claim, you don't have to have the stress afterwards. It's in black and white. There's no grey. You don't want the grey.
I think in your example as well, what we do encourage regularly is risk transfer. We want the hirer to insure the equipment outright. So we vet, if the hirer is damaging equipment, let's transfer the insurance onus onto them, so they insure it outright. We vet the policy documents to make sure it's adequate, and then if they have a claim, it's on their claims history and it's not on our clients. That's one way to get around that. The hire rental industry, the association, they put out, they do communicate really well around bad hirers, and if they steal stock or hire assets, we get a red alert, and that's really beneficial. So it's an email system that goes out to everyone, and to watch out for Joe Bloggs, who's just stolen a dingo from this site, and that's been working. I think that program, because in the past the same guy would knock off 5 hire companies in a row, but I think the communication between businesses is so good now that's becoming less and less.
Yeah, I get those emails as well, the red alerts. Like, it's really useful.
Yeah.
So I think in America it's very common for the hirers to have their own insurance when they rent things out. Is that not as common in Australia?
No, it's very common. Yeah, and we can facilitate it for the hirer as well. So we do that regularly. It's depending on the size of the business, really. I think, but that's our ideal situation, isn't it? Really.
It's the ideal situation, but it depends on the style of client. So if it's the DIY market, then they're necessarily not going to have the insurance in place. No. But most commercial hirers will have some sort of insurance in place, and risk transfer is what you'd want to do where you can. So. Because what we want to do is keep your business looking as clean and clear as it possibly can be, and if there is an event, you're protected from it.
There's still a bit of work in that for us as well, because sometimes come settlement, the terms and conditions might not match up exactly to the policy wording.
Yes.
So there's always a bit of grey area in those claims, and that's what we get paid for, really.
And And so over the past couple of years, the used equipment market, like the prices are going through the roof at the moment, where you can almost pay more for some used equipment than new equipment just based on the turnaround times from some of the OEMs. So how does that affect insurance? Because I'm just thinking about my insurance of my car as an example, like it just renews every year. And if I renew but the price goes up, then I'm not actually getting adequate insurance.
Correct. Yeah, it is actually a significant issue at the moment. As Damien mentioned before, plant and equipment policies, you specify the value that you're insuring the equipment for. So if I have, a 1.7 tonne excavator and I bought that for $20,000 2 years ago, chances are in the market that we're in at the moment, that's probably increased in value. You need to look at your equipment each year to make sure, because you're specifying the value, and as Damien mentioned, it's market value or what you've specified, or market value, whichever is the lesser. So at the moment, if we have clients that are rolling over the same values year on year, and they think, okay, well, I bought it 2 or 3 years ago, surely it hasn't gone up, or we'll just leave it as it is. We don't want our clients to be disappointed when they have a claim either. So we encourage them to have a look at the values, because at the moment appreciation has been significant. You're right. Like a used car has gone up significantly in value. Equipment has too. Every industry is being affected by that. And again, it's not a sexy topic, and it's not something that we want to sit and bury ourselves in paperwork, but it's definitely worth having a look at it, because Murphy's Law, the piece of equipment that you don't value correctly, that's the one that's going to get damaged.
And I think that also applies to replacing equipment. So the lead times to replace certain pieces of equipment is massive. It's years. So, but what we're talking to our clients at the moment about is, from a business continuity standpoint, is, well, what do you do in that time frame if you lost that machine or those machines, or you had a big loss, a significant loss, and lost 20 machines? What impact does that have on your business, and what do we need to do from a risk standpoint to make sure that you continue in business? So there are insurance products around business interruption that we can sit over machinery as well, standalone machinery that provides some gross profit cover and some additional costs to hire in equipment from other hire companies to make sure that you maintain your client base and maintain your revenue levels. So it's a really hot topic at the moment around used and replacing equipment.
I almost want to try and uncover why someone wouldn't be covered by insurance when they are insured.
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's certainly scenarios where things are an uninsured loss. So the flood events is a great example. So there are certain areas of Australia that you cannot buy flood cover, because there are 1 in 10, 1 in 20 year floodplain, and no insurer is going to just hand out money. So that's something that you could have your if you're looking at party hire and event hire, you could have your equipment insured, but you wouldn't have flood cover. So there are circumstances like that. COVID-19 is a great example as well. So business interruption that associated with COVID-19 was an uninsured loss for everybody. And some businesses were obviously hit harder than others, and that's awful, especially in event hire. But if every business was to claim on their BI, business interruption, for COVID-19, there'd be no insurance market left. So there's certainly going to be events that aren't covered.
So it's mostly to do with natural or something outside of the environment, really, yeah?
Yeah, well, we've certainly got clients that can't get insurance because their claims are so shocking, but that's really about, I guess, internal processes, and there has to be improvement there first. And insurers are willing to work with clients around excesses, but at the end of the day, the client has to be invested in improving their loss ratio.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of a scenario where maybe there's, I don't know, alcohol involved. Would that cut out insurance altogether? Is that a scenario?
In certain circumstances. So our policies have they protect the business owner. So if for instance an employee is in a work vehicle and they have a crash and they're over the legal limit, blood alcohol limit, we would look to protect the business owner, but we want to make sure that they have processes in place to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So periodic license checks is a good one, because unlicensed drivers is a very similar thing. So they might have an accident, they don't have a license, they haven't told the business owner that they lost their license.
It's very common.
Yeah. So again, the guidance that we give our clients is that there are some tools that you can use to try and make sure that you minimise that exposure. But we cover it. But if you have an accident in your vehicle, Mark, and you're over limit, it's not covered.
Yeah.
Because it's a known act.
Yeah, so it's always protecting the company.
Yeah, well, that's our aim. That's our aim, is to protect our client, and down the line, that if they've done everything in their powers to make sure they've done the right thing, when we expect that claim to be paid.
And so, what happens if I'm a rental company, I don't have insurance on a bit of gear, but the person I'm renting to does have insurance and they damage the equipment?
It really comes down to the ethics of that party. Whilst you have a contract between the two parties, you can submit, you can say, okay, here's the invoice for the repair, but it can be a lengthy process. If they chose to ignore you, you might have to take legal action, which is obviously quite costly as well. Or if they're an ethical company that want to do things the right way, then they can lodge it with their insurer, and their insurer could assess it. They might not come to the right value or to a value that you're happy with, but they could definitely lodge the claim that way and work through the process, but you don't have any power or control in that situation at all. If it is lodged through your company, which is your insurer or your broker can work with you, and they're trying to secure a good outcome or trying to recover from the other party as well. There might be some things that your policy doesn't cover, where your insurer can perhaps add some additional things to the recovery process that you might secure later down the path, when 3 to 6 months time after the insurers sought recovery from the HRIA.
That happens a lot, doesn't it, with consequential loss, especially loss of
very
use.
Common.
Loss of use claims, so demurrage type of thing. Yeah.
And what percentage do you think of companies don't insure their equipment?
Well, I don't think that look, we wouldn't deal with companies that don't insure their equipment. It would be an educated decision not to, and a self-insurance decision. So if a company just didn't want to insure and was just saying, I'll just take risks, and they couldn't afford it, and they didn't have the risk tolerance to wear those claims, then that's not a sort of business that we would deal with normally. But we deal with clients that self-insure all the time, so that they've evaluated what their exposure is, they know what the cost of insurance is, and they're happy to take that risk and pay the claims themselves, and that works really well. But you need to be really informed and have a really good idea of what your risk tolerance is.
Yeah. It's just managing that risk, as you said, and then just figuring out. I can't imagine someone putting out a large excavator and not having insurance. It would just be.
But it happens all the time.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's crazy.
There'll be businesses that would self-insure the first $1 million worth of losses that they have. Yeah, that's common.
Wow. And so, what do you think? It's just they're trying to save money?
Well, it's dollar swapping with the insurer, really. So you can either pay $1 million premium or $100,000 and self-insure. So,
and then they'll look at the balance of probabilities, and if they haven't had a claim in 10 years, they go, oh, okay.
I'm $3 million in front, yeah.
Yeah, and then that one bad thing happens on a job site, and then,
It can be significant, unfortunately. Yeah. It's Murphy's Law too. It always tends to be the piece of equipment that isn't insured that, there's a major loss with.
But part of the process, when we're looking at self-insurance programs, we'll map out their history and show what a self-insurance program would have looked like with their claims experience. And you can actually sort of map it over the last 5 years and say, well, had you been self-insured, using a self-insurance concept sort of thing, you would have saved this much, or it wouldn't have worked. So actual claims is a really good guide to how that would look and whether it's going to be a successful strategy for you or not.
We've definitely had clients we've gone down that path with, where you do the analysis over a 5-year period, and then you work it out to a dollar strategy, and you go, for every dollar that you've paid the insurer, they've paid you $1.20. So you are in front.
You'd be mad to self-insure, yeah.
Yeah, this isn't a good time for you to consider that. So we'd walk through the process, depending on where they're at in terms of their thinking on that.
Yeah, and so let's say I just started a brand new hire business. I've got a range of general rental equipment in my branch. What advice would you give to that small business owner that relates to insurance?
I think initially it would be connect with the association and use the resources that they have, because fit for hire tagging, terms and conditions assistance, and also the ability to branch out and connect with senior business owners in your local space and get some advice. That would be my initial advice, because I think that's something that the association does really well.
Yeah, and I think, I guess from there, even if they don't have the answer, they have a list of partners that they can refer, like they've got the law side of it, the insurance side.
Yep.
And so
HR.
Accounting, HR. It's definitely like, it takes the burden off some of the not all, but some of the administration, and it's like just getting a little bit of a head start in your business, and then having best practices to a certain extent.
And that's we give a few key examples of claims that common claims that we've seen regularly, and tips like that can be quite valuable to new hire companies, because until you've done it, until you're actually operating, you think, oh well, that's not a likely scenario, but it might be.
Yeah, it was interesting. I had someone from Sunbelt Rentals on the podcast last year, and earlier this year, and he owned his own business for 20 years with his family, and he got bought by Sunbelt, and so they acquired all the assets, and then he now works for Sunbelt. And it was like the first month or so that they got bought, he got a phone call, and someone said, "Oh, someone's rolled a machine," or whatever it was. And the first thing he thought of was like, "Oh no, like that's my money, insurance, blah blah blah." And then he was like, "Wait a second, I don't own the machine anymore. It's Sunbelt owns it." But it was just him explaining like when you're a small business and someone calls and said your boom lift just flipped over into a creek. That can just be so damaging if you don't have the right policies and processes in place.
Yeah.
You want someone to be able to hold your hand. Like the amount of times that I've had an excavator slide down a hill with an operator in it. Firstly, you want to make sure that the people who are there are okay, and then try and find a way to get the equipment out and go through the process. But it can be lengthy and challenging and emotional, and
stressful for business owners.
You want someone who has been through the process, who can guide you through it, and just let you know it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Now, I like to ask everyone, so I'll ask you both these questions. So how do you define success? Maybe we'll start with yourself first.
Success to me is probably happiness and having a great family. But in terms of work and success, I think one of my biggest bugbears in the insurance industry, and with a lot of industries, is people who speak in jargon. So a success to me is not being able to speak, or being able to speak to people in a non-jargon fashion. If I can explain something to an 80-year-old grandmother in the same way that I could, or to my children, not in a condescending way, or to clients as well, if I can explain it in a plain English way, like, you break it, you pay for it, or you buy the damage waiver. I think it shows that you understand it yourself, but you're also giving your clients a clean and clear picture of why they need us in the first place.
Yeah, you're not just saying buzzwords for the sake of it.
Yeah. So,
Damien?
Okay, for me, I think personally, I agree with you, Kylie. It's it's about happiness, and professionally, I think success means that you're proud of what you do, and I'm certainly proud of what I do. But I think, drilling down on that more, success for me is when I can work with a client, identify an exposure, and then unfortunately that happens and we've insured it, and it's something that wouldn't have been insured previously. That's probably the best feeling you have as an insurance broker, and that's certainly, success for me.
Well, you seem pretty excited when you found out that your client had a GPS tracker on and they found the equipment.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's part of the process.
It
yeah?
is, yeah.
It's like you would work with them to say a way to mitigate insurance is to put telematics on
Yep.
your machines.
Absolutely it is.
I could
Yeah.
see the success in your eyes.
Yeah.
Getting excited.
Well, we ride that roller coaster with the client as well. So these clients are also our friends in a lot of circumstances. So we certainly don't want them losing equipment and potentially paying higher premiums.
Yeah, very good. All right, Damien and Kylie, thank you for coming on the Rental Journal podcast.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much for
Mark.
having us. Thank you.
Very good.